Hello, welcome back to the Belonging Place. And this is where we talk about gatherings and belonging and connection as an anecdote to loneliness and addiction and other things. And we have a special guest today.
Yee.
Our guest today is,
Hi.
say your name,
Alycesun Clare.
Alycesun Marie Clare, who is my best friend of over 20 years.
Yeah, literally.
So when we say best friend,
Years.
I don't say that lightly.
No.
Okay, Alycesun.
Hi.
Alycesun spelled Alycesun.
Why?
Yes, ma'am. Alycesun.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Named after
Grandma Alycesun.
Grandma Alycesun,
Absolutely.
mom's mom.
Yep, mom's
Okay.
mom. Yeah.
We're gonna jump in.
Okay.
Okay, Alycesun, tell us a little bit about you. So for people who
Yeah.
don't know anything about you, what would you say?
Oh, wow. I mean, wow. I would say,
What do you do?
yeah. So I right now work for a nonprofit, Director of Operations. They're based in Malawi, Africa. Absolutely love it. I've worked with teens and children most of my life. I have taught. I've been in education most of my life. I am passionate about dance and have done that also. It started as a small thing and then grew.
Oh, we're gonna talk about that.
Yeah, something
We're gonna
special.
go back to that.
And I would say I am a bit eclectic. I'm a bit of an introvert, which is new. We've talked about this, learning that about myself. And I love reading. I love getting into a book. I love traveling. Yeah, I would say those are my high points, like my who I am. Yeah.
You already know this because I've talked to you about doing this on the podcast, but my next question is, who are you without any of those things?
Oh, yes. I think I'm an incredibly authentic person. I think that I love kindness. I'm a fan of it. I think that I, without all of those things, have just always authentically wanted to help people, be a part of people's stories. I think at a young age, I was more obsessed with other people's stories than my own. I don't know where that came from, but just that excitement of wanting to make sure everybody was taken care of and happy. Yeah, and I would just say that I love being a part of beautiful things, whatever those look like.
Yeah, I would say in addition, you're a creator.
Yeah.
I'd say you're an artist.
Yeah.
I would say you are a connector.
Thank you.
Teacher.
Yeah.
Friend, obviously.
Obviously. Thank you.
Okay, do you remember our meet cute?
I think I do.
Okay. How do we meet?
I feel like from what I remember, let's see if I can get it right. It was EFY.
Yeah.
And I feel like we were roommates.
Yeah.
And I was in awe of you. I was like, she is so cool. And I was young. And I
19, right?
19. My earliest memory, and this could be different from yours, but my earliest memory is talking in our room, like on our beds and chatting and finding so much connection with your love of people and being so drawn to that. Being so young and kind of feeling out of water, like a fish out of water, getting into that space with you is like, I love this person. I want to know more. But that's my earliest memory.
You're the only friend I think of mine. Well, my other good friend, Michael, I have a good meet cute with him, but it's kind of fuzzy because I met him when he was 15.
Yeah.
But you're, I think, one of my only friends I remember.
Okay, you got to tell.
And no, it's the same.
Okay, good. Okay, I was like
no, yeah. EFY, roommates, bunk beds.
Yes.
And it's funny because you were 19, but I was 25, 23.
Yeah.
23. Yeah.
23.
We're 4 years apart.
Yeah.
But it felt like oceans at that time. Did it not?
Absolutely.
Just like because I had already served a mission. I had come back from a mission.
Yes.
Just some formative. Yeah. I had my brother's death.
Yes.
Like I had some big life experiences.
Changes.
And I feel like you were like awesome, but young.
New.
19.
Well, because EFI was like the new moment. Like I feel like I was just coming into this space of pushing myself to do things that are scary.
It's wild to have a friendship of 20 years.
Yeah.
Because we started off like a little bit like that, but then that 4 years just has disappeared. And
no question.
There's no.
Oh, no question. And I
older,
felt like
younger.
I even remember in that conversation and then that summer, just not. It was almost immediate.
Yeah.
It was kind of like, this is my person.
Yeah.
And it happened throughout all the years, like anytime there was a touch point or a connection, the dialogue just has only gotten deeper and deeper. And it was crazy.
Yeah.
That moment to now.
Dude, I picked
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
I picked you.
I was so lucky.
In Grey's Anatomy, they have this thing for a long time that's like my person, this
Yeah, yeah,
idea,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If anybody's watched it ever, it's like this theme,
Yeah.
like you're my person.
Yep.
Yeah, you're my person.
I feel that too.
I'm curious on that note.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they have this saying in Ireland,
Okay.
Scotland. Oof.
Oof.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, everybody.
Love Scotland.
I don't know if it's Ireland or Scotland.
You could just say
The
both.
term is, I'll just say the UK.
The UK.
The term is anampurum. Have you heard this?
No.
Okay. It is, I think the direct, you know me and linguistics and stuff, the direct interpretation is soul friend. And I love that. We don't have an English word for that other than best friend. It's the best we have.
Right.
So on that note, there was a time in our lives when I started calling you my best friend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me about that. Did you recognize the shift? Did you?
I did
What does
because
that
you
feel like?
are a collector of people. It's one of the most beautiful things about you. And I knew that. I felt so lucky that I had been brought into that space. But I remember when I started hearing best friend, to be honest, there was a level of accountability to it because you're a giver, and knowing that I was being given something that would allow me to have access to you in that space made me want to be more effective as a friend. Because it was like, that's unique for Kai in the fact that she can give all to everyone, but what can I give to her? What does she need? And how can I read that? And I remember feeling incredibly privileged when I was like, oh, what's up? Yeah, that's right.
I'm really careful with my words. So there's only a few people in my life that I call my best friends, right? I have a lot of friends, but I'm really careful about that.
Yep.
And I don't expect that back.
Yeah.
I don't expect them to call me their best friend, but I was curious about how that felt.
It mattered. Yeah.
We're going to jump around, but there was an experience that happened maybe 10 years ago, maybe more actually.
Yeah.
And we were driving in a car. We were either going to Utah or Arizona. It was a long drive.
One of the things.
And I was struggling in life and I was having a hard time. I remember just really having a hard time. And I'm driving and I start like crying and I start telling you how much I'm struggling. Do you remember this moment? Okay, it's so vivid in my mind. And I'm just pouring out my heart. I don't know if it's because I was driving and looking ahead and you were sitting next to me.
Yeah.
But I just, more than I had ever in our friendship.
Yeah.
Just blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Just the vulnerability out of this world for me.
Yeah.
And I got done and instantaneously, even though I love you, and feel like you're safe, instantaneous vulnerability, like hangover.
Oh yeah.
But
panic.
That part of the story is like the least that I remember. I remember me, but you were just, it's like you broke open. You, from what I remember, you'll have to tell me, you were just almost shocked, but like cried and you said something along these words. I've been waiting for you. ... I've been waiting for you to be, for me to be strong enough or a safe enough place for you to like be vulnerable to me. And it changed my whole being. That moment where I was like, wait, what? You've been waiting for me to give to you? Like, before I continue, what I want to say a little bit more about that. Tell me about that on your side.
No
Do you
question.
remember that?
Oh,
experience?
I absolutely remember it.
It is seared in my heart.
Oh yeah. Well, and it correlates to what we were talking about, like the idea of being given the opportunity to be a best friend, and what I felt was a responsibility that mattered to someone who was so good at giving of themselves. I remember that instant because our friendship, really up to that point, I had benefited from. I was the young little Padawan at EFY learning from you. And then, even being in Arizona with you, I was coming to you broken. I was coming to you incredibly empty, with things that I couldn't even define myself at that point, and had this friend of mine that had such a skill in holding spaces. And I remember feeling uneven, and I remember wanting desperately to give back and not knowing if I even could. It was like, I wish I had the skill sets and the ideas and the approaches that obviously come from experience.
Yeah.
And yet here's this incredibly beautiful human that I want to show up for. And so I remember when you started sharing, one, I was like, oh, like she struggles. Well, look at that. Like, what's up? You know, like,
That's a genuine laugh.
okay. Because I felt like that was new for me to feel like not only does she struggle, but also sometimes like because of, I think, your background, I think because of your skill, there was a lot of disconnect when it came to like, you had always a resource or a process for it.
Yeah.
And so when you weren't processing, when it was like, I'm not doing okay, I was like, what? Okay. Like, we're all human. And it was a really exciting, not because you were in pain,
Right.
but it was exciting because I felt like I could start practicing. I could practice what I believed in and what I was seeing from you and others that I loved. And I think early on in my life, I knew practice was important because it brings about habits, and yet you can't do it unless you practice it, right? And so I just remember being excited, like, oh, I can practice this. And not only is this someone I love and value, but she's finally letting me see that piece of her.
Yeah.
I want to keep it safe. You
Yeah.
know? So yeah.
It was one of the first times for me that somebody could receive that and in a safe, good place.
Yeah.
I'd had enough experience. I've described this to a few people. I feel like vulnerability is a little bit like these antennas that you stick out of your head. They're seeking, and they test, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna test and test.
Yeah.
And I had multiple times when I had tested people and they poked the antenna or the turtle head into the shell,
they
right?
panicked a little, like, ooh.
Meaning they couldn't hold a space for me, maybe for a minute, but then it became about them.
Yeah, totally.
I come to them and say, I'm having problems, and then it becomes about their problems.
Yeah.
As a listener and as somebody who does hold space, like it ended up being like, oh, you can't. I think I always thought, oh, you can't hold my mess.
Yeah.
Like the role that I play in your friendship is that I'm
the one that holds it.
I'm together.
Which is a hard one-way thing. Yeah.
And I knew that vulnerability begats vulnerability.
Correct.
Right. And I also knew at that time, and know especially today, that is what builds connection. I mean, part of why I wanted to do this podcast was about the things that people do or become or are a part of to create connection and belonging are rarely pretty and shiny.
Yeah, they are not done well. Yeah.
They're usually failure and heartache and messy, right? That is where people usually connect, where they have empathy, where they have sympathy, where they grieve, right? So I remember being like, it was the part of you saying, I've been waiting, about how selfish it felt in that moment to have been a friend who either just didn't take a chance or didn't think you could handle it or any of the things, all the things in that moment were like, whether she can or not, like she's my person. So let it fly.
Let's practice. Right? Let's try this. Yeah. I love that.
And I do think things shifted.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right? Yeah. Because I think that became for me, again, a lesson and an experience of a two-way relationship. And how to be attentive to that when you're in a good place, when you're in a bad place, and how to rotate and how to be open to that, you know, it can't always be a certain role that you hold. Yeah. Because it does take away that opportunity to be vulnerable and to share spaces, you know? So
I want to dive into you a little bit, but before we get off, I'm curious for you, a friendship of 20 years is a long time. It is. Highs and maybe lows. What do you think has contributed to that?
Oh my gosh.
Longevity.
Oh yeah. You.
Now, please.
Listen, I
there's two in this equation.
There is. But I will say one of your skills that I learned from and I grew from was your ability to keep connections. And I, like I've shared in the past in our conversations, I learned later in life that I had quite an introverted personality. And most of my exposure at a young age was outgoing things, right? Like I was doing things in front of people and running camps and all the things. So when I learned that, it showed up in my relationships. It showed up in my friendships. So I would have the hardest time following through or staying as connected as I naturally wanted to, but I was more shy about it. I was more quiet about it. And so I can vividly remember our relationship being such a standing point because it did not matter if there had been like a drought of 6 months or check-ins every so often. You would show up, and in a very strong way. I remember doing was it Miss BYU Idaho? And I remember you were there, and it was a sacrifice. You came up, I believe, from Arizona, Utah, Arizona,
I think Arizona, yeah.
and I think you lost
Did a
your
nice
keys.
little drive,
Like
yeah.
I think you, of course I
Just took that part of the story.
did. But I just
Definitely lost my keys.
lost your keys, got there in time. Flowers, always flowers. And that I could say that is a consistent space in every event of my life, that you were there. And it heightened and pushed my desire, not only because you were someone I loved and valued and wanted, but again, my skill set in being a friend. And that required change for me. It required adjustments. And so I firmly believe our longevity was your gift
Oh,
that really helped. And then I think then my deep and love and appreciation for who you were and what you were offering and wanting to be that for you, I think built that really strong friendship so that we could keep kind of tag teaming
yeah.
throughout the years and being like, oh, okay, I'm back, but yeah.
So this will kind of show up as a theme with my friends through the season of the podcast, but I wouldn't say that I'm always like positive or easygoing in my friendships, because my friendships that matter the most to me, I like feel safe enough to give critical feedback and like say I need more or whatever. So
Yeah.
how does that feel to be on the side of that as a friend?
Do you know what? Great. Because, I think I grew up in a home where communication was so key, was so massive. In fact, we probably sometimes over communicated. But I think because of that, it felt comfortable. And I felt, and I have always felt more comfortable when I know where I stand with someone. I love feeling that way, even if it's uncomfortable. Like, even if what that person is saying is not kind, or I actually remember, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember a time in our friendship in Arizona where some pieces of items in your therapy, as well as with your friendships, you were struggling with and you were sharing, and I was struggling receiving. It was a place that I wasn't understanding. And I remember vividly you saying, like, I need you to tell me if you can sit in this with me. And if you can't, like, no problem, but I do need a place to dialogue about these specific, topics. And man, I appreciated that because I wasn't prepared. And so I remember saying, like, I don't know if I'm the right person this time. And then later on we were able to talk about it more, right? And I don't know, there's something so comfortable and safe about that. And so I loved that about the friendship, that you would say what's up, I could say the same, and we could alleviate each other in that space. I felt like that was lovely. Yeah.
The reason I asked that is because Ben Rector has this song
Ben.
called Old Friends.
Yeah.
And there's a line in the song that says, you can't make new old friends.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know the song that I'm talking about?
Yes.
I love it. And I think the sentiment is so true. You can make new friends.
Sure.
We've made lots of friends throughout the
Totally.
years, but you can't make new old friends. And one of the gifts that comes with old friends is that you have done a lot with them. You've held their hearts. You've taken turns.
Yep.
You've been frustrated with them.
Totally.
And you stay the course to get to the other side of that. And you come back 20 years in the making, and you're like, okay, you're my
You're my person.
Right.
Yeah.
You're my
Like, we got
soul
this.
friend. As somebody who's never had a partner, you're like my partner, right?
Yeah.
Like you're my person that I have experienced life, and you're a reflection of my life because of that.
Yeah.
And I think that grit and that, that I'm obsessed with this term, but like the resilience that's built in a healthy relationship where you can do that, all the sides of you, there's nothing like that. There's no other way to be seen. That's the way to be known, right?
Yeah, big time.
How does it feel to you?
It's healing, right? Like, I think being seen and heard is always just very, very healing. And I think that I think that's what's so beautiful about learning all versions of relationships. I think something we've talked about a lot is this version of being single. It heightens your awareness of how to build other relationships, right? It pushes you. It's like, okay, I've got to reestablish new spaces, and they're not going to fill this gap, but they could fill this space. They can adjust this space. And I just feel like that's something that our friendship and the friendships I've had in my life that really are longstanding and they allow me to practice, I feel like they're healing. They give me confidence that I can have relationships, that I'm capable, that I am lovable, that I'm all those like really big words that you have in your single life that you question a lot, that you really do sit in it and think, is it me? Do I just not have what it takes? And I think the beauty of these friendships are allowing us to gain that confidence that, yeah, my story's different. I don't have all the answers, but I can do this. I have the skill set. And I have people who are willing to practice with me with the skill set. If I'm not very accommodating, or I have certain personality traits that are challenging, I love that I have friendships that are long enough that can say, well, I'll sit with you in that, Allie. Let's talk about it. I absolutely remember many moments that you would try not to put your therapy hat on, but you would also say like, do you think that's totally what's happening here? And I'm like, and it would help me go back to my space, readjust, and seek out resources, right? And so, yeah, I think it's healing massively.
Okay, so this is a great segue for, there's a song that I want you to hear as we segue into this next piece.
Okay.
I'm going to play you the beginning and then fast forward to like the end.
Okay.
And then I just want you to have kind of this authentic.
Yeah.
I'm gonna preface this because you know this, but the audience doesn't know this, that one of our love languages is music. Yeah. And through the years when we were separated, you were a playlister. You would find the best songs and put playlists together. It's my favorite thing. You would always make me like a summer list or like a love list or like a rock out in your car list. So I figured that like having you on here had to come with a song.
Yeah,
so I'm gonna play this.
Okay.
It's called My Days.
Okay. Makes me want to like lay on the couch, like while you're playing the piano.
Where am I? Where am I going? Is it somewhere that I want to go? And when I get there, is that where happy is? Or is it somewhere I already know? Sometimes I feel like I cry without a noise. Sometimes I feel like somebody chose my choice. These days, all we ever and days to lose. I just
Okay. Okay, girl. Okay. That was so good.
Okay, thoughts.
Oh, I would say, but I mean, immediately the minute the song started and that like real authentic heavy space where it's like, what is my story?
Yeah.
And where do I sit? And is it worthwhile enough, right? Is my path exactly where it needs to be, or am I off, or is everyone else off, or like, what's the story here? I love the growth in the voice, and also the space that comes into that assurance, that confidence, and that, I would say, hope for that pathway being everything and more than perhaps what you think. But yeah, what a solid topic when it talks about just like that idea of like, is this the day I'm supposed to be part of? And then I'm going to make this my day. And I love that.
Yeah, like, is the direction I need to go staying or running somewhere else? And where am I even going?
Yeah, like,
is
what's happening?
happiness what I already know, or was it something else?
Right.
So I heard this the first time, it's in a context of something else. And the first time I heard it in the context of the show.
Yeah.
But the next time I heard it, I was like, yikes, that is the podcast. That is the thing.
That is the thing.
Taking what you have in your life and building, right? She says, like, I want to know that how I spent my days. And she's just like unapologetic, and I want to just like feel my life with color. She says joy. It's interesting enough, the singer's name is Joy, which I love that's a line in there.
I love
but
that.
the reason why I picked this song, I want to go here, is I feel like you're one of the best examples in my life of somebody who has just painted the town red in whatever opportunity you have been given, and not out of like, I need to just be seen as doing something and being miserable behind the scenes, but just like, I'm going to build the kingdom. I'm going to do the thing. I'm going to take opportunities. And when I'm in my hard spots, I'm going to pour myself and my time into other things, serving other people. We could have 5 podcasts to talk about it. There's a couple areas that I want to focus on.
Yeah.
I want to go back to ALA.
Yeah.
Like, I want to go back to before ALA.
Yeah.
So for those people who don't know this story about you, Alycesun, give us a synopsis.
To get to ALA.
Just where you started.
Yeah.
Parking lot.
Yeah.
Because this part of the journey, because I'm on it with you.
Yeah.
To leaving ALA and how many students.
Yeah.
And people don't know anything about it.
Yeah. Okay, so the short version, in one of my most darkest moments, I had an altering shift. I was teaching in Utah.
Special ed, right?
Special ed.
Okay.
And loved it. And within that life change, got a call and an offer for just a year. Will you come down and will you be a part of, assisting this school that's just starting up? It's in the strip mall.
Literally starting
little
up,
bitty,
people, just
little
so
bitty
you know.
school.
In a strip mall.
Teeny. So I go down, and at the time, Queen Creek is like the boonies of Arizona.
So far
like
out.
Everybody's like, where are you going? So I go out to this strip mall, and there is, I believe, total like 75 kids in the school. And I'm all things special ed, tech, student government, like you name it, teaching it.
And literally, this is the truth.
This is
I
this
visit
is
you, and
you
you
were
have
there,
every hat.
Yeah.
I was like, are you the principal? Are you like, who's in charge? Are you the adult on the campus?
No one knew who was in there. We're just, is it your turn? Are we going? Do I go? What do we do?
What's happening right now?
And about 6 months in, it was I just remember feeling like this is it. I've had this marriage end. I'm not lovable. I'm rejected. I'm in my lowest failure. And you're going to put me in this failure of a school.
Literally.
With these little gems that are barely hanging on. And I go into a meeting 6 months in, and they basically say, hey, we're not going to last. We don't know if we don't have an it factor. Rightly so. I mean, you're trying to run a high school in 4 like rooms in a strip mall, right? So for whatever reason, and I think obviously it was God who came in and started igniting that part of me.
I also think you
You
inherently had it.
My the little alley voice, right?
Yes.
I go home and I start thinking through, what could I offer? If we're going to finish, if this is over,
chills.
What do I got? What can I do?
Wait, before you keep going.
Yeah.
Say the sentence again.
What can I offer?
Yeah. What can I
What do I
offer
have?
the world? It's such
available.
a perspective
Yeah.
for connection and belonging that's different than all the other things we say.
No
Why does
question.
nobody care? Why don't I?
No
What
question.
can I offer? Okay.
Yeah. And I got a little speaker
I love this
at Walmart, and I decided for one of my student government classes, I was going to start teaching ballroom. I was going to start teaching dance and partner dancing and whatever. And the reason that came about is I one day had walked out and there were kids dancing in the parking lot doing hip hop. And, something just ignited like, well, what if we did something out of the box? So, pulled my 15 kids and said, you will dance. It will be fun. Don't worry. And what started as just kind of an impulse, like, let's just do something on the side. Um, it grew so fast, and
So fast.
it was a belonging space. Like, it was something that altered the kids' belief systems. I remember like taking them out in the parking lot, and we had Serrano's like burrito restaurant.
I'm standing on a chair.
Oh yeah, standing
Look
on
at
a
you guys.
chair. Yeah, standing on a chair. You're
Literally.
pushing play. They're in their little partnerships, and I'm screaming the swing, and what I couldn't believe, and what ignited a shift for me, was what ignited confidence for them. That I thought, there's no way you can get them to think that they're legit. I am too. There's no
my
way.
favorite version of you. It
Yeah.
will always be my favorite version of you.
Love you. And yeah, like it was so like, I think I came alive with these kids.
Oh.
And I felt like my story of feeling like I would never be enough and I would never be able to give anything showed up more when I got to see these kids be in a space that wasn't a successful space, and yet they flourished and they
Oh,
grew, and
boy, did they
they
flourish.
just like jumped in with both feet. And we built almost a culture of we're not ashamed. Like, we're not going to let this get in the way. We're going to do. And I remember early talking to them about competition and saying, why wouldn't we compete? And you could tell it was like, what? We're in a parking lot. No one has dance background in the class. Like, and within a couple of years, I decided, we're going to nationals. Like, we're doing it. Let's just jump in both feet and see what happens. And so I ordered like leotards on Amazon and sewed them to like these ghetto skirts.
Bedazzled. Just in your apartment, I'm sitting there. We're
Cheap
just
little,
like
we're just
watching
bedazzling.
movies, and you're bedazzling, and I'm just like, what is going on?
What are we doing?
At this point, you have how many students?
At this point, we'd grown to a couple hundred.
I was gonna say, help the people
Yeah,
along, 'cause
couple
we went from
hundred.
17 to 200.
17, 200, and we have now an official team. And this official team is the yummiest, most delicious group of humans.
And they love it.
They
Their
love
lives
it.
are changed.
They are all in.
Yeah.
We have never had a gym, so we've
Yeah.
never danced on a gym. We've danced in like large rooms or parking lots. We go to nationals with our
In
haphazard
Idaho, right?
Idaho.
Because I remember
we
going.
drive ourselves up.
Yeah.
We get out on the floor, and literally their first time on the gym floor with lines, like and I'm like panicking for them, because I look over and I see these other teams that have resources, they have background in
Money,
ballroom,
bought
money,
costumes.
they look phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I have no problem telling my kids, like, listen, mama loves you, but like, I don't know what's going to happen here. Like, this could go up in smoke, but I love you.
We're here.
And you're awesome. We're awesome. And
they had discipline. You had trained them.
They were
on, and when they were on, they were locked.
They were all in. And I just remember, like, at that competition, they performed their first waltz. And I'll never forget being in the back and looking out into the audience and making eye contact with my dad and seeing my kids perform flawlessly on a floor that they've never been on, in these haphazard dresses.
But they were gorgeous. Let me just say
They
to
were
the audience,
they were
amazing. Beautiful. They were not haphazard.
From far away, they looked great.
Okay.
But like, they placed first in their category, and it was the Cinderella
I've
story.
never screamed louder.
It was.
I think I lost my voice.
Well, and I feel like I had my people.
You did.
Dad. Like, I had the people that knew the dark
that were
spaces.
standing in the parking lot.
Oh yeah. And so to come out of that space, and then it grew exponentially. We ended up with a couple thousand kids a year. I got to bring on one of my dearest friends, Leah Stumpf, into that space, and she got to take on her own incredible program. And we built this incredible.
They built a whole school basically around.
It built the whole
your
school.
dance. You got a whole huge
Yeah.
gym dance room,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah.
also cried that day when I
Oh yeah.
walked
It
in there
was
and
so
took that tour. I did a lot of crying with
No,
your,
I mean
with your journey.
it truly is a
It was the
story.
most
Yeah.
PBS Kids
It was yeah.
Cinderella story.
Yeah, it was. And it was a story that God put into my life to show not only what he's capable of, but what pathways that do not make sense can turn into.
And I just
You
want to
know?
say, what a legacy, because for people like us who are
Yeah.
perpetually single, one of our fears, I don't want to speak for you, one of my fears, I think we share this, is the legacy we
Hands
leave
down.
behind. When you
Hands
don't
down.
have children
Hands
and you don't
down.
have a partner,
Yeah.
we have great families and stuff, but it's a
Yeah.
little bit like, how do you get
Where does
remembered?
that go?
But you have
Yeah.
thousands
Oh man.
of kids who you changed their lives. That is not even an overstatement, I would
No.
say. Particularly lots of boys that
Oh
like
man.
never would have
Yes.
danced in their lives, but
Yeah.
you blew
Yeah.
life of
Yeah.
dance into them.
Yeah.
And as awkward or as hard as
Yeah.
they disciplined as they were, they came in and man, they danced their hearts out.
Yeah, and I think that was like the secret sauce. I think that was a piece that I really got to get a sneak peek into. I had chairs in my big dance room that were set up by my desk, and it was an open invitation throughout the day if kids wanted to come and just sit, and they could study, they could do their thing, and more often than not, they would talk. Right? They'd hey Miss Claire, just gotta talk to my feelings, you know. And you would think it would be girls. Like you think that like there would be more of
Mm.
the girls that would come in and have like things to talk about. But I was shocked that my chair was mostly filled with my young men who wanted to come and have a safe place. I would work on my computer, so I wasn't giving them eye contact or anything that made them anxious. And they would just talk. They would just share
Just
about
felt
their
safe.
day, or they would talk about their struggles with sports or friends or who they want to take on a date. And then they'd finish, and I hadn't said a word. And they're like, thanks, Miss Claire. That was great. You know, and they'd leave. And it heightened my awareness of this idea that everyone needs a place to tell their story. Everyone needs a place to talk. Everyone needs a place to unload. And I think the dance program built that holistic view that like leave at the door unkindness, leave at the door the beliefs that you've gotten, and come in ready to have your story accepted
Mm.
and it contributed to the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Like be a part of it. And I think it continued to just,
Exponentially grow.
flourish.
And I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because
Yeah,
the
yeah.
story itself is just speaks for itself. But the interesting thing about growing belonging places is that you put your energy into it, you blow your life into it, and you want it to be the space, but there's always the paperwork side of the job. There's always the
yeah.
behind the scenes, which
Yeah.
was atrocious.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's always kids wanting to dance because they love it, and parents that are like, my
Yeah.
kid's on the football team.
Yeah.
Like, my kid's not a dancer.
Yeah.
There's always people when something's, I always say it's hard to build the train, but once the train is built, everyone wants to get on
Yeah.
it.
No, that's
There's
true.
like 1,000
Yeah.
cooks in the kitchen, right?
Yeah.
Watching you navigate that was heartbreaking alongside this beautiful thing. I think this is why sometimes people don't, what was the first thing you said? Like, what can I offer?
Yeah.
It's because it's a lot of work,
So much
right?
work.
And it takes all of you, right? And one of the things I want to give back to you and watching that as your friend, because it is just beautiful, is that the kids never saw that part of that, right? You always gifted them, like hopefully parents, when they're having a hard time with their kids, the kids come first, right? The kids always came first, and everything else was behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is one of the many places that you have created belonging. When you look back on that, because that was such a formative, healing,
It was a big space.
oasis, but work. When you
Huge
look back,
space.
what do you feel like you learned from that?
Oh my goodness.
You've shared a few along the way, but like
I think
big takeaways.
Yeah, I would say big takeaway is you can create when you're broken. Right? Like you can build and create and define and enhance anything, even if you are not in your best place. And
maybe even better.
Yeah, like maybe there's less ego and less hustle. You're just in the space and trying to do the best you can, but it also breeds others in their creativity. And, my kids knew that I was in pain in moments. They could see I wasn't my best self in some moments, right? And the grace that was given was special because they saw the same grace coming from me to them, where it was this idea behind everybody has a struggle. Everybody's in their story of pain or joy, right? But the storytelling of dance became our outlet. It became our way to heal. And so I would say the second thing, a huge takeaway, is find outlets to express and to extend your experiences, your emotions. However, it doesn't have to be creative, artistic. It can be in many, many forms. But I think we're built to express and divulge and take things out of context of just being inside of us, because it does, again, assist with that healing. It assists with that growth. And I almost feel like it stamps the confirming space. Like whenever we would create a story, a dance story, I could see in my kids' faces their dedication to that story. We did a piece that was for those that had served our country, and one of my boys came up later and said, my dad passed away, and I was young. And I watched the transformation for him, that dance didn't become just a dance, right?
His father was a veteran.
His father was a veteran. It became a dance where he was dedicating it to his dad, right? And that just shows up differently. And no one has to know that, right? It's not like it has to be expressed to everybody. But watching him and many others that decided to transfer that into something more intentional got to walk away with, I think, some healing. And so I just think there's just power in that. So those, I would say those are some of my takeaways.
Yeah. One of the other things is, I think you have, not everybody has this, but you have this generative, I love this word, generative spirit. So here you are putting all your guts and tears and all of you.
Yeah.
I'll use your word, all the pieces into this. And then you're creating dance. And then on top of that, with your lovely special ed heart, you're bringing... Tell me a little about this. You always included these kids.
Absolutely. Always. I felt like, and I grew up this way, I was always so concerned with the underdog. And I don't know where that came from. I think that just was innate. But over the years, it became something very important for spaces that I would build. And so as my program grew and there was teams that were getting more elite, I think people assumed then that was the approach, right? You build this program up so that you only have the best of the best.
Yeah.
I just disagreed with that. And I would regularly take my front row and put it in the back row. I would regularly have my elite team mentor my beginner teams. We always brought in any of the special needs students, anyone who was in any form of learning or physical disabilities, to come and be a part of this, because their ability to express far surpassed my students, and they needed to know that. They needed to learn that space. And so it forced, in a way, an understanding that the truth of that, you walk through my door, everyone is on equal playing ground. Everybody. And I think that brought a lot of confidence into kids, because while outside of that door, you had the cliques and the certain dynasties and groups, that didn't exist in my room. Everyone was expected to treat each other with kindness. You were partnered with absolutely everybody. There was no exclusion of partnerships. And then there was also this beauty behind differences. If you are uncomfortable, I also felt like it was important for our groups to learn about being uncomfortable. You don't have to stay in discomfort. That's not what I'm expecting. Come talk to me about it. But also let me coach you.
Try it out.
Let me coach you on how to navigate differences. Like if this makes you uncomfortable or nervous with this person, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out and build a safe space for everyone. And more often than not, I mean, I was blown away by what they were willing to do and what would show up again. Like just the amount of depth and diversity that showed up.
When you feel that person loves you that much, any teacher you had in your life that you just want to do your very best. I mean, your kids, they wanted to show up because
so
you
awesome.
opened the world to them, right? I just loved watching that all happen. In fact, loved it so much that when we were creating our studio, our business studio, like some of the principles you had done there, I was just like, hey, partner, let's foster this kind of environment. We're not going to compete with each other. We can compete the heck out of everybody else.
Go to town.
Inside, we're a family, and inside, we're going to work harder, smarter, not longer, more, right?
No,
like you said,
absolutely.
But we're, and I loved watching that. Yeah.
I love that. I just love that you got to be a part. I love the people that are like my people that got to be in that miracle with me. Like it was just so special.
I picked one, but I'm curious if you have any other places in your life, belonging places or gathering spots that you want to share about?
Yeah. Do you know, it's funny, as I was driving over here too, I had two thoughts that came up. One belonging place that really is unique, I think, is because of my story of being single, and I know you'll relate to this. I think we have learned to adapt to many versions of people. Um, and so one of my belonging places, truthfully, is being able to belong to many different places. That I can sit with the married couples, the families, the older, elderly. Like, there's this part of our story where you have to kind of adapt always.
Yeah.
And so instead of it being
Adapt or die, right?
yeah, like you gotta do it. And so instead of it being a commonality thing, like, oh, I'm gonna make all these friends in these groups where we all have the same story or with similar stories, I have loved that some of my most special belonging places have been with diversity and with like various religions, various outcomes, various stories, and there's still this really beautiful place that we hold.
Oh, I love that.
You know, and I love that. I love that that's something I can sit in and that I get to be a part of.
And that you get to teach the other people in that group, right? Because there are
Yeah.
couples that are just like,
Yes.
I have to be with couples, but you're like,
Yes.
I'm a great third wheel.
Yeah, like I'm awesome. Come on
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
I'm a value add.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. And I think that
And you
that
lived with your
has
grandma for a while.
Oh,
and like,
yeah.
that was the best.
No, it was, and yes, like I feel like getting to those spaces and with those people, it has given a richness, like an
All the colors,
authentic,
yeah.
yes, and
Ages and
yes,
languages and experiences and
Yes.
stories, right?
Yes.
You weave your story into their story.
yes, and mine has only benefited. Like I can kick it. Like I you know, I've joked, but I'm like I can kick it. If Patricia, my grandma, wanted to hang out on a Friday, I can kick it. I have no shame in getting on those jammies and living my best life with her, right?
Yeah.
And I can also dress up and go support my friend that's doing a certain gala, or I can go, babysit the yummy babies for my one friend and love every minute of it. And I think that's unique. And I love that. I love that that is an actual belonging place that's massive
I love that.
because it exists in so many holes and areas. The second one, which it came up because I was thinking about what it feels like when you're in a belonging place.
Yeah, tell me.
And this one was random, but after my divorce, when I went to Kenya, just a couple months after, I remember not knowing the severity, perhaps, of my experience. And that didn't come for long later.
Lots of therapy later.
Lots of therapy, everyone. It's fine. When I landed in Kenya, we went into this slums area, and they had a group of women singing and waiting for us. And all I remember is getting off of out of the car, the bus, and women coming up. And I remember seeing them. They just wanted connection, and they made full eye contact, and they really wanted to like be with me. And I just started crying. And I remember feeling they understood. They knew that there was a heaviness in me, and I felt like I could understand them, and nothing was said. And I think that's a belonging place of commonality.
Yeah, connection.
Just connection and just saying,
my pain sees your pain.
my pain sees your pain. It's in a different continent. It has variables that can't connect themselves. And yet there's so much about this that we can sit in together. And it was one of the first times in that kind of pain where I felt relief. And nothing had changed. Nothing in my personal life. There was mountains ahead of me going home from Kenya, right? And yet that gave me that strength to be like, I can do this. Like, if these women can do it, I can do it. And I have experienced that over and over and over and over again in various spaces. But I thought that was really special. So yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I said at the beginning of the podcast that we would get to the bracelet. So those who aren't watching us, describe what you're wearing right now.
I am wearing
like count maybe.
A plethora. I think I'm wearing 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm wearing 11. This one is like one that's all combined.
But it looks like 15.
Correct.
Also, how many rings are you wearing?
I think all except one finger.
Okay.
It just needs the last one.
And lots of bracelets and lots of necklaces.
Lots of necklaces.
So you just got to watch it so you can see what it looks like. But Alycesun,
Collection.
Tell me about your bracelets.
Yeah. So years ago, when my marriage ended, a couple months later, I had the opportunity to go to Africa. And it was really timely because I was in a pretty dark place.
Yeah.
And I remember at that time, my question in general was, maybe it wasn't even a question, maybe it was a statement
Mm.
of I just don't think God really cares.
Mm.
I don't think he cares. I've tried to live a life in correlation to what I believe. I've tried to be a certain XYZ person,
Mm-hmm.
and
I've been faithful.
it's not showing up.
Yeah.
It's not showing up. In fact, it's getting worse. So therefore, I don't think he cares. I don't think that's a space. So I remember getting into Kenya, and the group discussion was throughout these next couple of weeks, seek out questions if you have questions. So my question really was like, do I authentically matter? Like, is this really part of my plan? And we go down to the slums for our first day, and there's out in the corner my little boy, and he makes full eye contact and is following me the whole day at work site, at lunch. And every time he'd get close and I'd smile, he'd run, classic story. By the end of the day, he is right next to me, and he has his arm wrapped around me and holding my hand. And his name is Sean. And he would call me my Azungu, like my white friend, like she's mine. And everybody was laughing at it. Every single day, we'd get off the bus and he'd be waiting for me. And we would go do our work and then finish. About a weekend, or at the end of every day, our bus would leave and he'd chase the bus and follow me.
I love this.
So weekend, he wants to show me something. And so he takes me down the street in the slums and shows me his home. And it's a cardboard box with his brother. And they were collecting all kinds of materials to make bracelets to sell. He told me his grandma was really sick. And that was it. We went back to the work site and continued. And every day I got to see Sean morning and night. And I didn't connect dots at all. I just felt loved and seen and was, special. So the last couple of days, he came and sat next to me during lunch, and I had my simple wedding band on. And I don't know how obviously this is just the moment, but he pulled my ring off and grabbed a bracelet and put it on the same hand and kissed it. And that was it. That was the moment. And I remember kind of laughing and chuckling, and others were like, oh, he doesn't want you taken. He wants you to be his. But the rest of that couple of days, he would come and check on me. His brother would come check on me, and we're in contact still. But I remember getting home and realizing that that bracelet was a message. And so I made a decision that anytime I was given a message, anytime I had a moment where God was talking to me, I promised myself that I would get a bracelet.
Yeah.
And so I have a load of bracelets. There's a ton. But it was a moment that was, again, pretty simple, but it grew into something more. And now when I don't wear my bracelets, I feel empty because they have such a strong statement of when I'm in a dark place, when I'm struggling, I can't deny my moments. Like, I can't deny my moments. My big picture might be difficult, right? There may not be things that make sense, but the bracelets confirm that there are moments happening more often than not of awareness, of connection, of love, acceptance,
Yeah.
things.
And you have then given other people
Yes.
gifts when you think of them or
Yeah.
have an experience that has to do with them.
Yeah.
There's lots of bracelets that you've brought back from various places, right?
Yeah, bracelets have become kind of my go-to.
It's one of the symbolic versions of belonging and connection that I love.
Yeah.
And I love that it's just like become part of who you are and your personality.
Yeah, it has. And
it gives back.
And it's funny because even when I we stop in Kenya coming back from Malawi, the women know me.
Yeah,
they're like,
bracelets, girl.
All right, girl, get over here and get your bracelets. And I truly I feel like that has become really a special piece that I didn't expect, and it does get overwhelming. I need more room. I got to keep figuring out how to collect more, but I really will never forget feeling that moment with Sean where, in all that he didn't have, he wanted to make sure that I knew that I mattered and that he cared. And it probably bled into my ALA experiences and my ongoing experiences where you give what you have.
Pivotal moments some life comes into your life and you're never the same, right?
Never. Yep. And you just, yeah, it's that idea of like, you can offer something always.
Yeah.
Always. And
Always.
yeah, so that's my story.
I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
Um, like I think it's easier for us to look back on our lives and see, like the song that I was sharing, like,
Yeah.
man, you have shown up in your life.
Thank you.
Through the hard, through the good. You have built wells, I call them. You have just, I don't know, grit. She says in there, like all the corners, and just like have figured it out. Maybe not figured it out, but have just kind of given all of who you are,
Yeah.
wherever you are.
No question.
All the pain,
Yeah.
all the insight,
Yeah.
went to grad school, came back.
Yeah.
I call it wandered in the wilderness. You did some things they were really cool, but you were trying to figure out. Now
they're
you're
random.
working for this amazing organization.
Yeah.
I think that you always seem to land right where you need to be. And I love that about you. One of the common themes that you seem to have is your strength with your creator. I think we share that as well.
Yeah, big time.
My question though is, what advice would you give your future self? Because you've built a legacy up to this point, right? What do you think you would want to plant? What seeds do you want to plant between now and 10 years from now, Alycesun?
That's a good question. I would want my future self to really establish a really great way of staying present, like really being in the moments. Past Allie was in a hustle space, right? Because you feel the lack.
Yeah.
You feel the failure space. You start to
My
panic.
values and what I
I gotta produce. I gotta show up. And while obviously God has given me some incredible spaces for that, I've also been learning, and I would love to tell my future self, be present, like be in the moment, be with the people that are in front of you. I had an experience just recently in Africa where I was walking, sun was setting, and there was two ideas. One, pull out the phone and get the picture and send it to the family.
Yeah.
And two, like sit in it.
Just be here.
Just be in it. And so I put the phone away and immediately just started crying, because what comes with being present, which is hard, are feelings that you sometimes don't want. Yeah. I was lonely. I didn't want to be alone in Africa at that time. I wanted someone special with me. I wanted my people with me. And yet within that same hard emotion, there was also the beauty. And so I would want my present self to be okay with that, to be like, yeah, what comes with these present moments are going to be hard emotions, but they're more worth it than trying to sidestep them and keep the productivity and lose the opportunity to really experience what's in front of you. So I would say that's one huge space that I'd want future Alycesun to be a part of, is just being present.
Love that.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
I love you.
I love you. This was so fun. It's so great. We could go forever, right?
Yeah,
and there's so much to talk about. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.